Have you ever noticed that the biblical histories are actually a repeating cycle every 400 years? And this cycle occurs four times. Now that we've seen the nature of prophecy over time in the previous lesson, let's examine the full biblical or at least post exilic view of the timeline of prophecy. Do not believe it was an accident that it took 4 centuries from the time that the promise was given to Abraham till the time of the Exodus, when the promise to make them as innumerable as the stars was said to be fulfilled. I don't think it coincidence that it was another 4+ centuries of bondage and war with saving judges before he finally brought them rest under David's son Solomon, who built God a house, according to the narrative. I do not think it chance that it took them another 4 centuries to lose that kingdom and again slip back into bondage, after which they were again given another exodus from Babylon back to Jerusalem. Question remains whether the next and final 400+ year period that Daniel anticipated before the restoration was to come, which is the one for which we have the most historical evidence, was retrojected back onto Israel's historical narrative, or whether there was an actual God of history as revelation orchestrating the previous ones. Fortunately, it is not our purpose to try to answer that here. Let's consider other significant details. The second period length of 480 years during the period of the Judges is a multiple of 12, one of the favorite numbers of the Hebrews. Fourth period is 7 times 7 times 10, also significant numbers for the Hebrews. Where does the 430-year period come from in the first and third periods? I would be interested to hear from any mathematician any possible details of how 430 was somehow significant. Of course, I have a possible theory, and it's based on the Bible's own description of one of these time blocks. 430 is the number you get when you calculate how many years they failed to keep the land Sabbaths before the Babylonian captivity. If you count both the 7-year land Sabbaths and the 50th. Note that this calculation, based on 2 Chronicles 36:21, reproduces the third time block exactly, the period of the Davidic rule. Note one more pattern. God gives a promise at the very beginning of this timeline, and the cycle that's going to get them there is threefold: Exodus to temple, temple to Exodus, and Exodus to final temple. Of course, most of the final writing and redaction of the Bible stories into their current arrangement did not occur until the first part of the final period, after Babylonian exile. This holy history is primarily arranged for those people's situation. So, how did the rest of the world resonate so much with this story? Herein lies the rub for anyone who asks, like Pontius Pilate, what is truth? As I've noted many times, the Bible is the most influential literary anthology of all time, by far. If anyone wants to seriously take its claims into account, they must direct their attention to the spiritual rather than the earthly elements of prophecy, which, like the grass of the field, grew then withered. The Bible's prophetic assertions are not merely claims that a talking snake brought evil upon all mankind, or that there's an invisible man in the sky who will judge us when we die, as George Carlin so crassly put it. The Bible story is far deeper, with teachings that would sometimes perhaps make a Zen master scratch his head, and is expressed within a literary tapestry that is the greatest the world has ever seen, which I plan to make the subject of my next book. If it's all a lie, what better things do we have to do anyway? Stargazing or playing with finches on desert islands, though fun enough, just doesn't seem near as cathartic. Or maybe I'm wrong. Let's zoom in some more on the beginning of the fourth time period when this story was primarily written. See what drastic changes had happened to Israel, how different their second exodus was from the first, and how they dealt with such harsh realities, yet still maintained their faith and distinctness from the nations, despite the fact that God's presence was totally gone in the next lesson.